Ireland off to a winning start at the Women's World Cup. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. Decent performance from Ireland in this one. Japan definitely had them under pressure at times though, and there's definitely a lot of work ons, but let's go through the how things happened in the game, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how that leaves Ireland at the minute. So right to start, Ireland into the 22 in the first minute on the back of a strong carry from Linda Jugang. I thought she had an excellent game. Japan not releasing, Ireland kick to the corner to go to one of carries, penning away at the line, but Riley knocks on as she goes to the line. Good defence from Japan there, just not giving up a soft try. Ireland then go to the forwards carrying midfield, manage to suck in that Japanese defence. Then they go wide to exploit the space they've created. Koskinen released over on the left, and she has the pace to go in, converted for 7 points to 0. Japan initially finding it hard to halt the Irish momentum, and they get pinged for not rolling away again. Ireland kick to the corner. They claim the line out, set up the maul. Takes a while to kind of get it going, but then the backs pile in as they're going forward, and over to go Nii Jones at the back. The score, O'Brien converts for 14 points to 0. Then we have malfunctions in the Irish line-out. It wasn't clean for them at all today. Fair play to Japan for disrupting it, but it gives Japan decent field position. There is a crooked throw, not Ireland's first in the game, and certainly not the last after that either. Results in a 10-metre scrum to Japan, and first real attacking opportunity in that Irish 22 for them. Japan, they go through the phases, but they're forced out of the 22 by aggressive Irish defence. Japan then decide that to put in the kick into the corner. Ireland's line out malfunctions again, and Ireland do manage to hold them up in the tackle and turn the ball over, but definitely warning signs for Ireland in that kind of phase of play. Then, having soaked up that pressure, Ireland strike themselves. They go off a scrum out on the left in their own half. They move it in field. Costigan breaks up the middle, and then she finds Parsons, who finishes in the right corner, converted for 21 points to 0. Japan then find themselves back in the Ireland 22. They suck in the defence under the post. They got space out wide left. They go to Imakugi, and looks like it's going to be a try because there is plenty of space for her to run in. Pass isn't great though. It means she's got to reach up for it, checks her stride. Ireland managed to kind of scrag her before she goes over, but Japan still have that momentum. Quick recycle back inside, and it is Hirotsu is the one who gets over to score. That is converted by Otsuka, and we are at 21-7 at that point. Ireland then probing in midfield. Higgins slices her way through. She made some really great breaks today. She steps, and then she finds Chewett in support, who has a clear run under the post, converted to 28-7. And that was the bonus point try, and that's a halftime score. Into the second half then, Japan, plenty of momentum, to start the half. They drive a line out right up to the Irish line, but Ireland managed to halt them. Then they're picking going either side of the ruck. Ireland bravely defending, keeping them out, but eventually they run out of defenders, and Kawamura finally gets over, converted for 28 points to 14. Japan then, they break into the 22 on the left, and it was a really nice crossfield kick, and then a step back inside that gets them in there. Scramble defence from Ireland, kind of holding them out, but Japan have tons of players over out on the right if they can move it out there, and they're actually getting quick ball as well. Looks like Ireland on their heels, and it looks for all the world it's going to be a try for Japan, and it's really going to be game on. But then Higgins intercepts and goes the length of the field, scores under the post, converted for 30.5 points to 14. And, the whole momentum just came away from that Japanese comeback at that stage. Then Ireland then, they look to drive over in a maul from about 5 metres out. Japan, halt them illegally. So referee awards a penalty try. Kato goes to the bin, and we're about to get back underway when the TMO steps in and says that Ireland were blocking in the setup of the maul. It's that one you always see, a lot in Irish lineouts. I don't know why, whether it's for the men's or the women's, but basically the lifters, the jumper goes up and then the lifters go in behind and completely seal off and don't allow any access to the ball carrier. So like on the setup, so no try, no yellow card, and we're still at 35-14. Ireland though do get another try a few minutes later. Dalton with a strong carry. Basically Ireland had a line out, they go to the middle line out, they set up what looks like a maul, but then they shift the ball straight away, and she picks a line right at the tail of the line out, just at that seam, and goes through there, carries really well, gets up to within maybe like 5 meters or so of the line, and the Japanese defense can't really reset in time. Ireland recycle, and then Breen goes over next to the post, converted for 42 points to 12. Then we have Jugang. She goes to the bin for preventing Japan from tapping, going quickly from a penalty. Japan then applying pressure, trying to get that extra score. And they're very close to the Irish line. But Ireland managed to scramble clear. Then it's Ireland's turn to kind of go on the attack and try and get that final score. But in the end, the kind of last 10 minutes, goes by with both teams having kind of half chances, but no real clear chances to score. And the full time is 42 points to 12. So decent performance from Japan, but they'll know that, their chances of progress relied really on them winning this, unless they're going to cause some absolutely massive, world altering upset against New Zealand. Then it's probably not going to happen for them. And at the same time, you would think that Ireland should be through, but you can't say for certain either. They've still got to beat Spain, and that's not a guarantee for them. You would expect them to beat Spain, but expecting and actually delivering not exactly the same thing. But you would think that the big test for Ireland will be, can they compete against New Zealand in that final pool game? So let's have a look at the stats, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Ireland after that. So let me pull those up on the official site. I have to say as well, it's a decent level of stats that they're providing in this as well. I have to say the stats in terms of the women's game over the last kind of year or two really has improved. It still has a way to go. There are actually those stats. I will say there are stats available for the women's game that I'd like to see available for the men's test games as well. But the timeliness of them and the variety of stats available certainly has improved hugely over the last few seasons. But yeah, so here we are. So start with territory. 51-49, Japan just shading that, and then Ireland shading the possession by the same margin, 51-49. So not a massive difference between the teams. The difference really was Ireland taking their chances and Japan not doing so, and then obviously that big kind of 14-point swing where Japan looked like they were going to score, and it ended up in an Ireland breakaway try instead. So on to attack then. So runs 102 for Ireland to 81 for Japan, and Ireland made 526 meters to Japan's 202. So you're looking at Ireland making just over 5 meters per run from their 100 odd runs, and Japan only getting about half of that, about 2.5 meters. So, Ireland really getting that front foot ball and to go forward. And, that kind of shows you why, even though they had very similar numbers in terms of how much the ball they had, that, Ireland were doing a lot more with their ball than Japan were. Onto then, the rucks. So Ireland at, 96% for their rucks, which is, it's not bad. You want to be up there. Kind of 96 is kind of your base. I think you want to be up 96, 7, 8, 9, etc. Japan at 99, excellent. Ireland weren't really competing too much for the ball, but there was one thing, I saw Ireland mentioning it to the referee a few times as well. The Japanese were kind of just flopping on the rucks a lot, and I saw one actually. There was one where an Irish player had just completely left the ruck, and there was like a shorter Japanese player was just basically just hanging off her. It just looked a bit weird. But yeah, you get that. You've got to adapt to the referee's interpretation. That's the way I always look at it. You can't, the referee doesn't have to suit your game. You have to suit the way the referee is refereeing. But then on to defenders beaten, 18 from Ireland to 9 for Japan. So, Ireland certainly, creating those missed tackles a bit more, and then offload 6-1. And it's nice to see Ireland kind of, keeping the ball alive and not just looking to, kind of slow the game down and just use their forwards all the time as well. When it was on, they were looking to keep that ball alive and, exploit the space that the forwards had created with the carries as well. In terms of, passes then, 161 to 128 in favour of Ireland. Rucks won 82 to 72. Mauls won 3 each. And I think it was 100% as well on their mauls. And then, meters mauled 16 to 12, in favour of Ireland. On to set piece then. So, start with the scrums. Ireland, 5 from 5, 100% in their scrums, and Japan 7 from 7. But Ireland definitely had the nudge in the scrum. Not so good in the line out, where they went 15 from 19, and even some of the ones that Ireland won, where Japan, I thought, did a good job getting up there and disrupting and not making a clean ball for them, even when they did win it. And as well, the not straight for Ireland kind of killed them a few times too. And that's definitely something that they've got to work on, because they're going to come up against much better lineouts than Japan in this tournament. And if you're taking away one of your platforms like that, it's going to make it very hard, to put points on the board. It's one of the areas where Ireland like to strike from. They got, as I said, they got that try, where with the, coming off the back of the line out as well and move the ball quickly, but that doesn't happen if your line out is not straight or wherever. Japan then, their line out not faring too well either, just 7 from 10, 1 from them. And, again, it was that thing as well, that with Japan, they did well on disrupting the Irish lineup, but you've got to take advantage of that by having your set piece going well at the same time, and they couldn't do that as well. So it meant that even though, as I said, they were doing well, kind of reading the Irish lineout, the fact that they couldn't secure their own ball was kind of a bit of a killer for them. On to kicks then, kicks from hand, 17 to 15. Ireland with a couple of more kicks, and in terms of I thought Ireland's kicking game earlier on in the game was decent in terms of just getting him in the right positions. They were good mix of kicks as well, in terms of either going up the line, kicking to space, and also putting up contestable kicks just outside the 22. And I think that certainly in that first half where they were building their score, worked out pretty well for them. And, the kicks at goal as well, we got 6 conversions out of 6 and Japan 2 out of 2. And it's not that long ago in the women's game where a lot of teams didn't have a kicker who could be that consistent off the tee. So again, it just shows how much the game has come on. And yes, there's still room for improvement from it, but I've always said, the women's game is really where the growth is in terms of rugby. And I still don't understand why the different unions, don't see that in terms of that's where your major investment needs to be, because that's where your major revenue streams in the next kind of 10, 20 years are going to come from. It's not going to be in terms of just growing the men's game. If you grow the women's game, you're going to, have the chance to get them up on par with the men's game and not necessarily double your revenue, but there is a good win there in terms of capturing new revenue and getting new fans into the sport as well. So onto defense and discipline then. Tackle success, 89% for Ireland to 82% for Japan. So 89% is kind of around like you want to be in, test match environment. 85% and up is where you want to be. 89 is good. Into the 90s is exceptional. Japan at 82, a little bit lower down than they'd like to be. And some of those missed tackles definitely, you could see it in the build-up to tries as well. The one where Ireland just sliced up the middle for Tuitt's try. There was a couple of missed tackles in the lead up to that. Then tackles made, 104 to 128. 104 from Ireland and 120 from Japan. And just then on the discipline side of things, Ireland conceding 6 penalties and Japan 8. So both teams keeping it in single figures. That's always where you want to be. And, decent from Ireland in terms of keeping it that low, but got to keep that going through the pool stages. And then that 1 yellow card for Jugang, in terms of the, not letting Japan tap quickly. So then individual stats. So you got, Saito was the top tackler in the game, 16 tackles from her. And then Eve Higgins with 150 meters. You had the break for the Tuitt try and then going coast to coast as well when she intercepted for her own try as well. And 2 offloads from her. Let's see what else we have then. Game line carries, 9 from Stacey Flood as well. I don't see any more individual stats, unfortunately. I think that's, again, stats have improved, but would like a little bit more to be able to drill down a bit more on that, because we haven't even mentioned, Hogan, who got, player of the match, in terms of stats, but she had a brilliant performance for Ireland, not involved too much in the scoring point, as we can see, but still absolutely exceptional, for Ireland. And, also, this is Ireland's highest points tally in a Rugby World Cup. Before that, 40 points against Kazakhstan in 2014. So, another big milestone for Ireland. But again, it kind of shows the difference, I think, between the men's and the women's game in terms of the gap between the likes of Ireland and the likes of, England, New Zealand, even France, in terms of just hitting those heights at Rugby World Cups. The likes of Ireland, Scotland, Wales didn't have a great start to the World Cup, but those kind of teams, there's still a lot of growth there for them, and a lot of kind of records, I think, are going to be broken in this World Cup and in the next few to come as well. But a decent performance from Ireland, but still a lot to work on. Japan were able to get to the edges at times and exploit that space that's there against the Irish defence. Whether Spain can do that or not, I'm expecting Ireland to certainly make changes for that game, but New Zealand absolutely will. And so that's a worry for Ireland in terms of defence. And then in terms of attack, the other worry is that, for some of the Irish scores or some of the Irish attacks, they needed a couple of bites of the cherry to finally get over. There were times where they were misaligned or they was a little bit stilted, and they've got to iron all that out. They have time to do that, obviously, but it's going to have to be an absolutely epic performance if they're going to be competitive in that. But before that, they've got to make sure that they're absolutely switched on against Spain. There's no point in good results here and then throwing it all away in that game. So that's got to be considered. I think for Ireland, for the moment at least, that's their final. Go into that Spain game thinking we absolutely have to win this. If we do that, we're into the knockouts, and then from the knockouts on, Ireland obviously not among the favourites to lift the trophy. But if you get into those knockout stages, you just want to go as far as you can. So let's see, can they do that next week? Can they seal that position and then go from there? But yeah, as I said, decent opening from them. Japan, they played well in patches, and I think that's something about this Japan team as well. We saw Ireland went there for 2 games there. Was it last year? Or I think it was last year. And Ireland won the first and Japan won the second one. And Japan, that kind of shows the kind of team that Japan are, is that they can produce a performance, but they don't have that consistency to be able to really compete, in terms of going through a pool. Now, that's something that can absolutely change World Cup to World Cup. And, hopefully we're going to see the likes of Japan and some other, test nations that are around that kind of level really being improved. The World Rugby, in fairness to them, are trying to get those improvements in there. And, Japan, I lived there for a long time. My wife was Japanese. I want to see them doing well. But obviously I'm Irish as well, so I'm happy for an Irish victory, but I want to see Japan rising, on that tide. Really, for the women's game and for rugby, it's about everyone rising on the same tide, and hopefully that's going to happen. But that's it from me. Let me know what you think down in the comments.